During our Thanksgiving dinner, my sister unexpectedly learned I had $12 million, and my entire family suddenly exploded with endless demands. It happened during what was supposed to be a normal Thanksgiving dinner, the kind where everyone pretends to be thankful while secretly judging each other's life choices. I had managed to keep a huge secret for years, 5 years to be exact. After selling the rights to a tech tool I developed, I ended up with $12 million sitting in various investments and accounts, and I intentionally kept it hidden from my family because I knew exactly what would happen if they ever found out. Unfortunately, this year my luck finally ran out. My sister asked to use my laptop to show a cute video of her kids, and I didn't think twice. I should have. One accidental swipe on the trackpad opened my financial dashboard, and suddenly the screen was filled with numbers that might as well have been glowing in neon. Total balance, $12,083,442. My sister froze. Then she screamed. And just like that, every fork dropped, every conversation ended, and every pair of eyes at that table turned toward me like I had just confessed to being a secret billionaire alien. What followed was an explosion, questions, accusations, demands, all overlapping each other. My mom asked why I would hide something so important from the family. My brother asked how much I could spare to help him start a business he had never mentioned before. My aunt wanted money for a house. My cousin wanted a new car. Even my dad, who hated asking for anything, cleared his throat and quietly said it would be nice if I helped him pay off the mortgage. Nobody asked how I felt, how it happened, or why I kept it private. They only focused on what they thought they deserved. Within minutes, the room turned hostile. They accused me of being selfish, ungrateful, secretive, and irresponsible. My sister even cried dramatically, claiming that I didn't trust my own blood. I tried explaining that I wasn't obligated to fund everyone's dreams like a walking ATM, but no one wanted to hear that. The final straw came when my mother demanded that I split the money equally among the core family, because, as she put it, family wealth should stay in the family. I remember staring at her, stunned, speechless, realizing that in their eyes I wasn't a person anymore. I was a bank account that had betrayed them. So I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and told them all that if money was the only thing connecting us, then maybe it was better to disconnect. I left the house, drove home in complete silence, and turned off my phone. By the next morning, I had dozens of messages ranging from guilt trips to threats to emotional manipulation. And that's when it hit me, maybe I didn't lose my family that night. Maybe I simply saw who they really were for the first time. When I finally turned my phone back on the next afternoon, I expected maybe a few angry messages, but the flood of notifications nearly froze the screen. My family group chat had transformed into a battlefield, half of them demanding explanations, the other half arguing with each other about how the money should be handled, as if it were some sort of communal property. My sister had changed the group chat name to Family Emergency Meeting. I didn't reply. A couple of hours later, I heard knocking at my door. Not gentle knocking, pounding. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach twist. It was my mother, my sister, and my uncle. All three of them stood there like a delegation sent to negotiate with a foreign government. I opened the door just enough to show I was listening. My mother stepped forward immediately, acting wounded rather than angry. She said she didn't sleep, that she was heartbroken, that she couldn't believe I had hidden such a life-changing blessing from the people who raised me. My sister chimed in, saying I owed her an apology for embarrassing her in front of the family when I walked out. Not a single word about my feelings. Not a single question about why I kept it private. Just more entitlement wrapped in guilt. Then my uncle spoke, and he went straight to the point. He said I needed to sign papers he had prepared, legally promising to help support the family financially. I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. He actually thought I would sign away my independence like I was some kind of child who needed management. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not out of anger, but out of clarity. I told them, calmly, that my money was mine, my life was mine, and their demands were never going to be met. My sister started raising her voice, accusing me of tearing the family apart, saying I was choosing money over blood. My mother began crying in that quiet way she uses to manipulate sympathy. My uncle tried to physically push the papers into my hands. I stepped back, looked at all three of them, and said words I had never said to my own family. If the only version of me you care about is the one with money, then you don't care about me at all. And then I closed the door. For the first time in my life, I locked it, not because I feared them, but because I needed to protect myself from the people who were supposed to protect me. I stood there in the quiet, breathing slowly, feeling a strange mix of sadness and freedom. My phone buzzed for hours afterward, but I didn't answer. A week passed before things escalated again. Because my sister did something I never expected, even from her. She went public. A week after that unforgettable Thanksgiving disaster, I was starting to feel a strange sense of relief. The silence from my family felt almost peaceful, too peaceful, in hindsight. I hadn't heard from my sister, my mom, or my uncle, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had cooled off. Maybe they were finally respecting my boundaries. I was wrong. It started with a single message from a friend I hadn't spoken to in months. "Did you see the news?" I frowned and quickly opened my phone. My heart sank. My sister, in some incredible, absurd, and utterly shocking move, had posted a video online, on her social media, on Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok, telling the entire world about the family scandal of the century. She made it sound like I had been hiding a fortune for years while letting the poor, suffering members of the family live in deprivation. She claimed, with all the dramatics of a daytime soap star, that I had betrayed the family and left them to struggle, while I lived in secret luxury. Within hours, my phone was blowing up. Messages, emails, even notifications from strangers who somehow felt compelled to comment on my personal life. Some were sympathetic, most were cruel, and a few were downright threatening. I felt trapped, as though the safe little bubble I had built for myself had exploded. I didn't just have family demanding my money anymore, I had the world judging me, shouting at me, calling me selfish, greedy, and heartless. I tried to ignore it. I really did. I told myself, this is my life. I don't owe anyone anything. But then came the calls. First my aunt, sobbing over the phone, begging for a loan, saying she needed money for a medical emergency that I didn't even know existed. Then my cousin, demanding a brand new car because it was only fair, claiming he was living in a dangerous neighborhood and couldn't survive without my help. Then my dad, the man who had always prided himself on being independent, quietly whispering, "I suppose it would be nice if you helped us with the mortgage." The calm, manipulative tone of his voice made me feel like I was trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. By the third day, I realized the situation had escalated far beyond Thanksgiving or even family drama. It had become a war of expectations versus reality. My sister, emboldened by the video going viral in a small, obsessive way, had taken control of the narrative. She was no longer just my sister, she had become the self-appointed spokesperson for the family, claiming she had everyone's best interests at heart, while painting me as the villain. Comments online called me a heartless sibling, a selfish millionaire, even a monster hiding behind spreadsheets. Each time I read one, I felt my chest tighten. And then came the threats. Small at first, passive-aggressive messages in the group chat, but they escalated quickly. She started contacting people I knew professionally, spreading rumors that I was dishonest and unreliable. My work life began to feel the ripple effect, with colleagues subtly asking if it was true. I was fighting a war on multiple fronts, and it was exhausting, emotionally draining, and completely unfair. One night, after another barrage of messages and calls, I sat in my apartment, staring blankly at the ceiling. I realized something. This wasn't about the money anymore. It had never really been about the money. It was about control, about entitlement, about using me as a resource rather than treating me like a person. My family had seen me as a bank account, and now the world, fueled by my sister's video, was seeing me the same way. That's when I made a decision. I knew I couldn't just sit and react anymore. I had to act, but smartly, carefully, and in a way that protected myself while showing my family, once and for all, that I wasn't just a dollar sign. I hired a lawyer to send formal notices, making it clear that threats, harassment, or attempts to manipulate me would not be tolerated. I also decided to publicly address the situation, but on my own terms. I recorded a video explaining, calmly and firmly, that the money was the result of years of hard work, that I loved my family but that I could not be coerced, and that while I hoped for reconciliation, I would not compromise my independence. I shared it privately with friends and colleagues first, then posted it online. The reaction was instant. Some people applauded me for standing up for myself, others criticized me, and some family members were furious. But for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. The storm was still there, swirling and chaotic, but I had a plan. I was no longer a passive victim of their drama. I was a person asserting boundaries. And in the silence that followed my bold move, I realized something unexpected. For the first time in years, I felt free. Truly free. Freedom, however, came with a cost. My sister stopped speaking to me entirely. My mother alternated between passive-aggressive texts and long silent treatments, and my uncle continued trying to push legal threats. But I held firm, reminding myself that a family that only values you for your wealth isn't really a family at all. I had money, yes, but more importantly I had myself. And sometimes that is worth far more than $12 million. Weeks passed, and the tension didn't fade, it mutated. My sister's video had gone semi-viral in our local community, and suddenly, everyone knew about my fortune. Strangers would stop me on the street, coworkers whispered behind my back, and even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years began calling, all under the pretense of catching up, but clearly angling for a piece of the pie. My phone never stopped buzzing, my inbox overflowed, and I realized with a sinking heart that the family drama had turned into a full-blown social spectacle. Then came the unexpected twist. My sister tried to negotiate publicly with me. She posted a follow-up video, this time more manipulative and dramatic, claiming that I had ignored the family in their time of need, and that my refusal to help was a betrayal that could never be forgiven. The comments exploded, half siding with her, half defending me, but the flood of judgment felt suffocating. People were not seeing me as a person. I had become a character in a story she was writing, a villain she had cast perfectly. One evening my phone rang. It was my father. I braced myself, expecting more demands or guilt-tripping, but his voice shook. He sounded scared. He said, almost whispering, that my sister had gone too far and that people were now threatening me online, even sending letters to my apartment. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It had spilled into real-life danger. That night, I realized that no amount of polite explanations or calm videos would stop her antics. I needed to take control, not just for my money, but for my safety. The next day, I met with my lawyer and began a formal process, restraining orders, cease and desist letters, even notifying local authorities about the harassment. It felt surreal, turning the people I had grown up with into potential legal opponents. But I had no choice. I couldn't risk my life or my sanity for the illusion of family loyalty. Meanwhile, my sister's campaign of public shaming continued. She created fake stories, posted edited photos, and even tried to convince mutual acquaintances that I had been exploiting the family emotionally for my own gain. But then something unexpected happened. Amidst the chaos, a few family members quietly reached out, apologizing for being manipulated by my sister. My younger cousin, the one who had originally asked for a car, sent a private message. "I'm sorry. I realize now I was just swept up in her drama. I want you to know I still love you, not your money." Even my uncle, after realizing how aggressive and reckless his actions had become, offered a tentative olive branch. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was a glimmer of hope. I began to realize the most important truth: my wealth didn't define me, and those who truly mattered would see me for who I was, not what I had. I strengthened my boundaries, limited my contact with toxic family members, and focused on building relationships with the people who valued me as a person. Slowly, the harassment began to subside, not because my sister stopped, but because I no longer gave her power over my life. By the time the next holiday season came around, the family drama had settled into an uneasy silence. My sister no longer mentioned the money publicly, my mother's messages were polite but distant, and my father occasionally checked in, carefully avoiding the minefield that had erupted months before. I had emerged not just unscathed, but stronger, aware that wealth could attract greed, envy, and manipulation, but also aware that the greatest asset I had was my own sense of self. Sitting in my apartment that Thanksgiving, I realized I was finally free to enjoy the holiday without fear, guilt, or manipulation. I cooked my own small dinner, played my favorite music, and even laughed at the memory of that chaotic first Thanksgiving when everything exploded. And as I raised my glass to an empty chair in my apartment, I thought, sometimes the hardest battles aren't about money, they're about who gets to control your life. And this time, I had won. Just when I thought the storm had passed, the unexpected happened. One chilly morning, I opened my mailbox and found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single letter, typed neatly, but its contents made my blood run cold. My sister had escalated everything to a level I hadn't anticipated. She was now threatening to go public with falsified claims that I had, illegally acquired, my fortune. She even claimed I had intentionally kept the family in hardship to benefit myself. I realized then that the situation had become more than family drama. It was now a calculated campaign to destroy my reputation. I felt a wave of panic for a moment, but then something shifted. I remembered the months of harassment, manipulation, and threats. I had survived, strengthened boundaries, and protected myself legally. I decided it was time to take control completely. I contacted my lawyer and together, we prepared a counter-strategy, one that was public but factual. I recorded a statement detailing exactly how I earned my money, showing documents, screenshots, and proof of legal and ethical transactions. I spoke calmly, directly into the camera, addressing not only my family but the public. I made it clear that any attempt to intimidate, manipulate, or defame me would have legal consequences. The reaction was immediate. The video went viral, not because of scandal, but because of my courage and composure. People admired the way I stood my ground. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Support came flooding in from friends, colleagues, and even strangers who had followed the story online. The tide was turning, and my sister's attempts to smear me started to lose traction. But then came the final twist. My sister, desperate and cornered, decided to confront me in person. One evening, she showed up at my door with tears, pleading, and accusations all rolled into one chaotic storm. She said she had been manipulated by her own envy, that she didn't understand how my success could exist while hers felt so small, and that she was scared of losing the family if I continued to hold my boundaries. Her words were raw, emotional, and surprisingly honest. For the first time, she admitted she had acted out of insecurity and selfishness rather than genuine need. I listened cautiously. I told her I forgave her for the chaos she had caused but made it clear, trust had to be rebuilt, boundaries had to be respected, and money would never be a measure of love or loyalty. Slowly, over months, a fragile reconciliation began. My sister stopped using the story publicly, my parents learned to respect my boundaries, and even my uncle backed off completely. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy, but it was real. That year, when Thanksgiving rolled around again, I hosted a small, quiet dinner at my apartment. Only a few family members came, those who had proven they valued me for me, not my wealth. We laughed, shared stories, and for the first time, I felt peace. I realized that money could attract greed, envy, and manipulation, but it couldn't dictate who I was, who I loved, or who truly mattered in my life. I had survived betrayal, harassment, and emotional warfare, and emerged not just financially secure, but emotionally stronger, wiser, and free. As I sat alone for a moment after everyone left, sipping my coffee and reflecting on the chaos of the past year, I realized something profound. The hardest battles aren't about money. They're about standing firm, asserting who you are, and refusing to let anyone, no matter how close, turn your life into their battlefield. And that Thanksgiving, I finally knew what it felt like to truly win. Just when I thought I had finally reached some semblance of peace, life threw one last, shocking twist. A few weeks after that quiet Thanksgiving, I received a call from my sister, but it wasn't like before. Her voice was shaky, panicked. She admitted that she had made a terrible mistake. Someone she had confided in about our family drama had leaked private information to the press. Now, articles were circulating online claiming our family feud was far more toxic than anyone had imagined, and my name was being dragged into a scandalous, fabricated story about family exploitation. I felt a mix of anger, disbelief, and exhaustion. After everything, it seemed like chaos would never truly end. But in that moment, I realized something vital. I had survived every challenge thrown at me before, and I was stronger than I had ever been. I refused to be dragged into the drama again. I calmly explained to my sister that I would handle this legally and that she needed to take responsibility for her actions. I also realized that forgiveness didn't mean vulnerability. It meant recognizing the truth, setting boundaries, and protecting myself. So I acted decisively. I contacted my lawyer, drafted a public statement, and worked with media outlets to clarify the facts. I presented evidence of my legal earnings, the truth about my financial independence, and the harassment I had endured. This time, the narrative shifted completely. People began seeing me as resilient, smart, and composed, not as a greedy or heartless person. The tables had finally turned. But the final surprise came from my sister herself. She showed up at my door one evening, no videos, no cameras, just her. She looked genuinely remorseful. She said she had realized something I had always known, that family isn't about money, and that her envy had clouded her judgment. She admitted she had been manipulative, selfish, and unfair, and that she wanted to start over, not as enemies, but as siblings who actually respected each other. I looked at her, and for the first time in months, I felt a real sense of closure. I forgave her, not because everything was okay, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me. We sat together for hours, talking, laughing, and even admitting embarrassing memories from childhood. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. That year, Thanksgiving was different. I cooked a small dinner for only those who had proven themselves trustworthy. We shared stories, jokes, and gratitude, not for money, not for status, but for the relationships that actually mattered. I realized then that money could never measure the value of true connection, trust, and love. And more importantly, I understood that standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, and refusing to let greed and manipulation control your life is sometimes the most powerful act of all. As I sat in the quiet afterward, sipping coffee and reflecting on the whirlwind of the past year, I smiled. I had learned the hard way that family dynamics can be toxic, envy can blind people, and money can bring out the worst in those closest to you, but I had also learned that strength, courage, and clarity of mind can protect you from chaos. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. True freedom. That final Thanksgiving became the turning point I had been waiting for. The tension, the drama, the manipulations, they were finally behind me. My sister and I had begun rebuilding our relationship, slowly and cautiously, but with honesty. My parents had learned to respect my boundaries, and even my uncle had retreated, leaving me with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. I realized that the money, the $12 million, was never the real issue. The issue had always been people expecting me to sacrifice my well-being, my freedom, and my sense of self just because they could. That year, I hosted a small, peaceful dinner. There were no arguments, no demands, no dramatics, just laughter, conversation, and genuine connection. We shared gratitude for simple things: health, safety, and the ability to be together without chaos. I finally understood that wealth can attract envy, greed, and manipulation, but it cannot buy trust, respect, or love. Those are earned through honesty, boundaries, and integrity. As I sat at the table, sipping my coffee while watching the golden sunset through my window, I smiled. I thought about how far I had come, from being ambushed by my own family over money, to standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and reclaiming my life. I had survived betrayal, public scrutiny, and emotional warfare. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and free. For the first time, I truly felt like I was living on my own terms. And in that quiet moment, I realized the ultimate truth: money may reveal people's true colors, but it cannot define who you are. Only you can do that. That Thanksgiving, I didn't just survive, I won my life back. And that, more than anything, felt priceless.